Chapter 366 progresses rapidly. Lin Fei knew that every technique had its own unique character. The stronger the technique, the more distinctive it would be. To persuade these techniques to join him, there was only one way: to subdue them or let them recognize his potential. Therefore, Lin Fei immediately demonstrated his saber domain, enveloping the technique with it. A perfect saber domain was rare. Lin Fei believed that even if this saber bloodline technique was proud, it would realize that finding another with Lin Fei's level of saber talent would be almost impossible. Hence, Lin Fei was confident. Supreme Saber Dao requests to become your martial art. As expected, a voice echoed in Lin Fei's mind. Agreed. Lin Fei, of course, accepted. In the next moment, there was a rumble in Lin Fei's mind. His martial king bloodline seemed to start refining. All the saber techniques, including the dual world saber divine ability that Lin Fei had practiced before, emerged in his mind. The system's voice rang out. Your Supreme Saber Dao bloodline has refined your martial king bloodline. Due to your bloodline containing Saber Dao divine abilities and countless saber techniques, the progress of the Supreme Saber Dao bloodline has increased by 100%. Your Supreme Saber Dao bloodline has broken through to mastery. Lin Fei was taken aback. He had only just begun practicing the Supreme Saber Dao bloodline, and now it had already achieved mastery. He quickly accessed the system to verify. Host, Lin Fei. Martial Arts Realm, Early Martial King. Supreme Saber Dao bloodline, mastery, progress 6%. Saber domain, perfection, progress 40%. Indeed, his status now included the Supreme Saber Dao bloodline. Within him was a bloodline that was distinct from before, a purely saber-oriented bloodline. His previous bloodline was still present, but it had fused with his physical bane, making it his foundation and impossible to cultivate further. The only way forward was to extract and cultivate more pure bloodlines from it. Moreover, Lin Fei noticed that his saber domain's cultivation progress had increased by a whopping 40%. Given that his saber domain was already at perfection, a further 40% improvement indicated that he might soon evolve it into a saber world. Naturally, this wasn't an unexpected burn. In order for the saber domain to evolve into the saber world, one must cultivate the saber bloodline. The two complemented each other perfectly. Lin Fei's cultivation of the saber bloodline was a win-win. Feeling the saber bloodline within, Lin Fei realized that once he fully unleashed this bloodline, his saber attacks would reach an incredibly fearsome level. Yet, the Supreme Saber Dao bloodline was merely at the mastery level. This wasn't enough. He needed to cultivate it to perfection before cultivating a second bloodline. To elevate the saber bloodline, besides comprehension, one could forcibly seize another saber bloodline, he thought. However, such bloodlines are rare. Moreover, if one isn't careful in suppressing the will of the acquired bloodline, a bloodline conflict could arise, leading to death. Lin Fei pondered for a moment. Unless there was no other way, he wouldn't choose the path of seizing another saber bloodline. All he could do now was to rely on his own comprehension to enhance the saber bloodline. Wait, there are divine abilities within the saber bloodline. Could integrating other saber divine abilities boost the Supreme Saber Dao bloodline? An idea struck in. However, he needed to test it out. Lin Fei entered the Dubhe Dao Artifact's martial sovereign level space. There were numerous martial arts divine abilities. Lin Fei sought out the saber divine ability manuals. As he channeled his thoughts, he activated his internal saber bloodline. Instantly, it surged within him, expanding his body rapidly. An intense aura emanated from him as if he turned into an unparalleled treasure saber. At that moment, Lin Fei's true martial king form was that of a saber that could cut through the heavens. This was the Supreme Saber Dao bloodline. Facing the saber divine abilities below, Lin Fei declared, I have cultivated the saber bloodline. Saber divine abilities willing to fuse with my bloodline for eternity in a perfected state, come forth. For these saber divine abilities, Lin Fei's Supreme Saber Dao bloodline was incredibly enticing. Using his perfected saber domain, the saber's divine abilities on the shelves became restless. They began to surge towards him, answering his call. One by one, the saber divine abilities transformed into phantoms, merging directly into Lin Fei's body and combining with his Supreme Saber Dao bloodline. These divine abilities were exceptional since they were collected by the true immortal Dapper. Each one had its unique characteristics. They ranged from great divine abilities to even top-tier great divine abilities. Lesser divine abilities were notably absent, perhaps, to the true immortal Dapper, they were not worth collecting. As these saber divine abilities integrated, each one enhanced the cultivation progress of Lin Fei's Supreme Saber Dao bloodline. However, the extent of the progress varied. Some divine abilities significantly advanced the cultivation, while others added just a bit. This discrepancy was due to the compatibility with Lin Fei's saber bloodline. His Supreme Saber Dao bloodline was the epitome of sheer offensive power and dominance. Some divine abilities, even if top-tier but more holistic in nature rather than purely offensive, contributed minimally to his bloodline's progress. In contrast, even ordinary great divine abilities, if purely offensive, would considerably boost Lin Fei's Supreme Saber Dao bloodline. In essence, the Supreme Saber Dao bloodline was selective, integrating only the most synergistic divine abilities while filtering out the rest. As more and more saber divine abilities were assimilated, the number of divine abilities within Lin Fei's bloodline increased proportionally. Should Lin Fei have descendants in the future, those inheriting his Supreme Saber Dao bloodline would likely manifest a variety of saber divine abilities due to the sheer volume integrated. Depending on the divine abilities they awaken, their powers might differ, underscoring the potency of Lin Fei's lineage. After all, how many bloodlines could incorporate such an array of divine abilities? Your Supreme Saber Dao bloodline has reached 100% in cultivation progress, breaking through to transcendence. Finally, Lin Fei's inner Supreme Saber Dao bloodline had advanced once again, reaching the realm of transcendence. However, after reaching transcendence, he fused with a few more saber divine abilities and then stopped. He had exhausted all the saber divine abilities at hand. While Dubha, the true immortal, had gathered many saber divine abilities, all of which were of great divine ability level or above, they were still finite in number. Who could have thought that someone could use saber divine abilities to forcibly upgrade their saber bloodline? It was a challenging endeavor and often thankless. Becoming a martial king allowed one to continue cultivating divine abilities, but to integrate them into the bloodline and elevate it, the divine abilities had to be perfected. The immense effort required to cultivate a divine ability to perfection and then merge it could only slightly enhance the cultivation progress of the bloodline. For a martial king, this was hardly worthwhile. But Lin Fei was an exception. He could let those saber divine abilities integrate into his bloodline at the perfection realm without any effort or time spent on cultivation. Lin Fei glanced at his system panel again. Host, Lin Fei. Martial realm, early martial king. Supreme Saber Dao bloodline, transcendence, progress, 21%. Saber domain, perfection, progress, 80%. With the Saber domain's cultivation progress at 80%, when the Supreme Saber Dao bloodline reached perfection, the Saber domain would also evolve into the Saber world. Out of Saber divine abilities, Lin Fei murmured to himself, an idea forming in his mind. He needed to return to the ancient continent. Only there could he continuously acquire saber divine abilities, allowing him to perfect his Supreme Saber Dao bloodline and potentially evolve the saber world. The Great Chan was not a place for long-term cultivation. To reach higher realms, he needed to return to the ancient continent, the center for all cultivators. With this decision made, Lin Fei rose, leaving the secret chamber and heading towards the main hall of the Nine Profound Sect. Chapter 367. Lin Fei's return, rejoining ancient origin sect. In the main hall of the Nine Profound Sect, Lin Fei gathered the sect master, Zhao Kunming, Shen Lianxin, and others. These were the individuals he trusted most. Brother Lin, your aura. It was Shen Lianxin who first noticed the change in Lin Fei. After all, Shen Lianxin was a martial sage and was very familiar with both Lin Fei and the martial sovereign realm. But now, Lin Fei's aura had unmistakably shifted. Even if Lin Fei was deliberately trying to suppress his aura, the bloodline of a martial king had caused a profound transformation in his physical body. On a particle level, the martial king bloodline had remolded his physique, elevating his life force to another level. Lin Fei glanced at Shen Lianxin and nodded, I have achieved the martial king realm. Boom. This revelation left everyone in a state of shock. Even the usually composed Shen Lianxin jolted up in surprise. Martial king. Shen Lianqin was deeply astounded. In fact, people like Jia Kongming and the sect master of the Nine Profound sect weren't quite familiar with the concept of martial king. They just knew it was something beyond martial sovereign and that it was powerful. However, they didn't have a concrete understanding. Shen Lianqin was different. Having originated from the ancient origin sect in the ancient continent, he was well aware of the significance of a martial king. The entire ancient origin sect, with its lineage spanning over 10,000 years, had never produced a martial king. A martial king was in existence on par with a nascent soul cultivator. The Tai Dao Palace, known for its dominating prowess and with a lineage stretching tens of thousands of years, was powerful primarily because its founder was a nascent soul great being. And even after tens of thousands of years, they still benefited from the legacy of that nascent soul cultivator. A martial king was more than capable of establishing a sect similar to, if not more illustrious than, the Tai Dao Palace and far surpassing the ancient origin sect. Brother Lin, you previously only possessed 6 divine abilities. Shen Lianqin's gaze was sharp and keen. He, albeit being just a martial saint, was well aware that to achieve the martial king realm, one needed to unify 9 divine abilities. How could one become a martial king with just 6 divine abilities? I had some fortuitous encounters, Lin Fei replied vaguely. From the treasures rumored in Great Chan. Shen Lianqin immediately thought of this possibility. After all, according to the rumors, Great Chan was a land filled with treasures, some of which could catalyze the formation of a nascent soul or even the achievement of the martial king realm. It's a little different than you might think. But it is indeed related to a treasure. Lin Fei didn't hide this fact. However, he refrained from going into details. After all, the Dao artifact was a matter of great significance and it was best not to divulge too much. The tiny bit of information he had revealed about the treasure was inconsequential. Lin Fei had now become a martial king. Even if he had acquired a treasure, what of it? Others would only feel that a martial king should possess such treasures. Only the strong were entitled to such treasures, and Lin Fei was now among the strong. Moreover, there was the presence of the Azure Flood Dragon King, ensuring the safety of Great Chan. I have achieved the martial king realm, and I can no longer progress in my cultivation in Great Chan. I must return to the ancient continent, Lin Fei declared. So, I'll be leaving Great Chan. Brother Shen, will you stay here or return to the ancient continent? Naturally, I will return to the ancient continent, Shen Lianqin responded without hesitation. As just a martial saint, to aspire to the martial sovereign realm, he had to go back to the ancient origin sect. But Lin Fei, once he returned to the ancient continent, there will be no one left to defend Great Chan. If another powerful individual from the ancient continent comes to Great Chan, how will we defend ourselves? Jiao Kongmin asked with evident concern. It was a practical concern. The martial path in Great Chan was still in its nascent stages. They didn't even have a martial saint. Against powerhouses from the ancient continent, they would be defenseless. Lin Fei responded with a slight smile. I've already considered this. After I leave, I will arrange for the Azure Flood Dragon King to guard the surrounding seas of Great Chan. Anyone approaching Great Chan with ill intent will be killed without mercy. The Azure Flood Dragon King. The attendees were unfamiliar with this name. Lin Fei extended his hand, and there, within his palm, was the Azure Flood Dragon King, resembling a gecko. Azure Flood Dragon King, meet the people of the Nine Profound sect. If any of them face trouble in the future, they will seek you in the sea, and you must assist. Upon Lin Fei's command, the Azure Flood Dragon King leaped up, and with 8 boon, its form began to expand, revealing its true massive self. The Azure Flood Dragon King was a peak-level exotic beast king. Even having lost half of its bloodline, it remained a beast king on par with a martial king. Its overwhelming presence momentarily stunned Jiao Kongmin, Shen Lianqin, and the others. You can seek me out in the seas when necessary, the Dragon King spoke. Then, reverting to its gecko form, it perched on Lin Fei's shoulder. Jiao Kongmin and the others were still reeling from the shock. However, the thought of having a beast king guarding Great Chan provided them some comfort and peace of mind. In that case, Elder Lin, return to the ancient continent, one of the elders said. However, I hope you can leave us with a sea chart. If in the future, Great Chan produces a martial saint or even a martial sovereign, they can use the chart to travel to the ancient continent. Lin Fei nodded in agreement and handed over the sea chart. He then briefly visited his family and, taking Shen Lianqin with him, quickly departed Great Chan. Upon reaching the outer seas of Great Chan, Lin Fei released the Azure Flood Dragon King into the vast ocean. The dragon transformed into its majestic true form, a creature naturally dominating the vast seas. It felt invigorated, akin to a fish returning to the water. Guard the seas near Great Chan, Lin Fei ordered. Anyone who dares approach with ill intent must be killed without question. His harsh demeanor wasn't out of cruelty, but a necessity to deter adventurous martial sovereigns or golden core true persons. Without such measures, Great Chan would never be at peace. Master, rest assured. I will guard the seas near Great Chan, the Azure Flood Dragon King promised. Lin Fei felt reassured knowing that the dragon, whose power was on par with a nascent soul cultivator, was protecting Great Chan. Let's go, Lin Fei said without hesitation. Together with Shen Lianqin, they swiftly left Great Chan, crossing the ocean towards the ancient continent. Their journey across the vast seas was smooth. Any potential troubles were effortlessly averted by Lin Fei's mere presence. By emitting just a trace of his martial king aura, marine beasts scattered in fear. Although the deep ocean housed many king-level exotic beasts, they were rare and primarily resided in the deepest depths. Therefore, 4 powerhouses like nascent soul cultivators or martial kings traveling the seas posed minimal danger. Upon returning to the ancient origin sect, Lin Fei's first agenda was to annihilate the Tai Dao Palace. He didn't waste any time and immediately gathered leaders from the ancient origin sect, including the Wind Sovereign and various martial sovereigns. Fellow sovereigns, Lin Fei began, although the Tai Dao Palace has been at peace with our ancient origin sect, as long as they exist, our sect will never truly be safe. I plan to visit Tai Dao Palace again. This time, I intend to level it to the ground and erase its existence. The room was filled with murmurs of disbelief. The Wind Sovereign sighed, Sovereign Lin, you've been to Tai Dao Palace before. Without the strength of a martial king, one simply cannot deal with them. Martial king? Lin Fei smirked, and in the next instant, a powerful surge of energy erupted from him, displaying the overwhelming aura of a martial king. Chapter 368. The Saber Domain evolves into Saber World. Even the faintest aura of the martial king bloodline had the power to utterly suppress the martial sovereigns. Thus, within the grand hall of the ancient origin sect, as Lin Fei unveiled the might of the martial king bloodline, a colossal phantom silhouette manifested behind him. Intricate patterns adorned its form, and a majestic flood dragon draped over its shoulders and back. A terrifying aura enveloped the entire hall. Every martial sovereign was on the verge of suffocation. The sheer pressure alone was unbearable. Yet, no one felt dread, they were awestruck, even ecstatic. They understood the significance of the aura Lin Fei was exuding. That's the aura unique to the martial king bloodline. Has Sovereign Lin achieved the martial king status? Inconceivable. In such a short time, Sovereign Lin has become a martial king. Has our ancient origin sect birthed a martial king? Hearts of the Wind Sovereign, the sect leader, and others were filled with unparalleled astonishment. They had witnessed Lin Fei's ascent, step by step, even reaching unparalleled prowess beneath the martial king and nascent soul. Yet, their courage shock dwarfed any before. No matter Lin Fei's strength, nothing could compare to the awe of becoming a martial king. A martial king signified an eternal lifespan. It meant that as long as Lin Fei existed, the ancient origin sect could thrive, possibly for tens of thousands of years. In the future, the ancient origin sect could claim lineage to the martial king, standing on par with the nascent soul lineage. Sovereign Lin, have you truly become a martial king? Although many had their suspicions, the sect leader sought confirmation. All eyes turned to Lin Fei, eagerly awaiting his affirmation. With a sweeping gaze, Lin Fei nodded. During my recent journey, I encountered a few fortuitous events. I awakened the martial king bloodline ahead of time and achieved the status of martial king. Hence, I intend to venture to Tai Dao Palace once more, to eradicate it and put an end to future threats. His words brought immense relief to the members of the ancient origin sect. He truly has become a martial king. Wonderful. At last, our ancient origin sect has produced a martial king. The Tai Dao Palace could never fathom that Sovereign Lin is now a martial king, could they? Seize this chance and annihilate Tai Dao Palace completely. Then, our ancient origin sect could even replace them. The sect members were filled with elation and all rallied behind Lin Fei. The time had come to confront the Tai Dao Palace and obliterate it, for leaving it be would always pose a threat. "I'll first head to the Martial Dao Tower," Lin Fei announced, then set forth to Tai Dao Palace. "Gather intel on the Tai Dao Palace and prepare thoroughly." With that, Lin Fei departed from the Grand Hall, making his way toward the Martial Tower. The hall remained occupied only by the sect leader of the ancient origin sect, the Wind Sovereign, and a few others. Even though Lin Fei had left, the profound shock lingered in their hearts, as if they were still grappling with the revelation. "From now on, Sovereign Lin shall be the sole martial king of our ancient origin sect. It's always said that Dao Seekers have boundless potential. Yet, who would have thought that Lin Fei could achieve the stature of a martial king? It is the fortune of our ancient origin sect. Perhaps, in time, we might rival the glory of Tai Dao Palace, shining brilliantly for tens of thousands of years." These martial sovereigns, one by one, were ecstatic, imagining the future grandeur of the ancient origin sect. Lin Fei ventured to the 4th floor of the Martial Dao Tower. He had come there first because he needed a plethora of Saber divine abilities to integrate into his Supreme Saber Dao bloodline, evolving the Saber domain into the Saber world. By then, visiting Tai Dao Palace would be all the more prudent. And Lin Fei wouldn't need to expend much time or energy. Gazing at the array of divine abilities before him, Lin Fei took a deep breath. With a resonating hum, he manifested his true martial kin form, a form powered by his Supreme Saber Dao bloodline. As such, he resembled a divine saber, his entire being emanating fierce saber edges. Another hum echoed, and the complete saber domain enveloped the entire 4th floor. "I possess the Supreme Saber Dao bloodline and the complete saber domain. If you wish to aid in the perfection of my Supreme Saber Dao bloodline, willingly merge into my saber bloodline in your complete form." The bloodline flows on, and the divine ability remains eternal. After Lin Fei spoke, he fell silent. Now, he was a martial king and even held the saber bloodline, a lineage every saber divine ability would dream of, yearning to merge into it immediately. How could they resist? With a series of swift motions, one by one, the saber divine abilities transformed into beams of light, infusing into Lin Fei's body and eagerly integrating with his Supreme Saber Dao bloodline. Instantly, the growth of Lin Fei's Supreme Saber Dao bloodline commenced. Perhaps the ancient origin sect didn't possess the most potent saber divine abilities, and most might have been lesser divine abilities. But to the Supreme Saber Dao bloodline, whether it was a lesser divine ability or a great divine ability, it mattered not. What Lin Fei sought were divine abilities that resonated with the philosophy of the Supreme Saber Dao bloodline. As long as they could enhance the cultivation progress of the Supreme Saber Dao bloodline, any divine ability would suffice. Thus, divine abilities began to merge into the Supreme Saber Dao bloodline. Lin Fei's cultivation of the Supreme Saber Dao bloodline advanced rapidly, reaching 30%, 50%, 70%, and 90%. The progress of Lin Fei's Supreme Saber Dao bloodline was swift. In such a short span, dozens of saber divine abilities were incorporated. With so many saber divine abilities, it was only natural for the Supreme Saber Dao bloodline's cultivation progress to soar. With a thunderous boom, the Supreme Saber Dao bloodline within Lin Fei finally achieved perfection. A tremor coursed through Lin Fei's being, and even his mind echoed with resonating reverberations. For, with the culmination of the Supreme Saber Dao bloodline, the progress of Lin Fei's saber domain also surged, reaching a cultivation progression of 100%. Simultaneously, a voice from the system resonated within Lin Fei's mind. "Your Supreme Saber Dao bloodline's cultivation progress has reached 100%. Your Supreme Saber Dao bloodline has achieved perfection. Influenced by the Supreme Saber Dao bloodline's completion, your saber domain's cultivation progress has ascended to 100%. Your saber domain has broken through. Your saber domain has begun its evolution into the saber world." Lin Fei had anticipated this. He surmised that once his Supreme Saber Dao bloodline reached perfection, his saber domain might also transform directly into the saber world. And now, it seemed his presumption was accurate. His saber domain had commenced its autonomous evolution into the saber world, a process even Lin Fei couldn't control. With a resonating hum, Lin Fei's saber domain began to spread uncontrollably. "Go," he commanded. He was unsure of what would transpire once the saber domain evolved into the saber world. However, he was certain he couldn't remain within the ancient origin sect during this breakthrough. For even a minor ripple from the Saber world might potentially obliterate the entirety of the ancient origin sect. Without hesitation, Lin Fei soared from the martial Dao Tower, departing the ancient origin sect to a desolate mountain range. Let it begin, he declared, no longer restraining his Saber domain. Another rumbling sound filled the air, and the Saber domain expanded magnificently and wildly. In an instant, the entire mountain range was enveloped within it. Dazzling saber lights and fierce saber edges gleamed brilliantly. Creatures within the mountain range cowered, trembling in fear. And amidst this grand spectacle, Lin Fei's saber domain began its gradual evolution into the saber world. Chapter 369. Taoist Lord Shenhe. The difference between saber world and saber domain is vast. The saber world as a whole, independent world. Once the saber world has evolved, even if its master dies, as long as it's not destroyed by external forces, it will exist forever. At this moment, Lin Fei's saber domain was evolving into the saber world. There was a clear distinction between its inside and the outside world. Everything within the saber domain became more real. The previous saber domain felt unreal, like an enclosed space that was clearly visible at a glance. But in the saber world, apart from the deep comprehension of the saber Tao, everything else feels no different from the outside world. Here, people can live and cultivate. If the master of the saber world, Lin Fei, wished, a booming sound would ensue with just a thought, transforming the saber world into a vast city. This city was shaped according to Lin Fei's memories of the city. The city could constantly change its form, adapting to whatever shape he desired. This was the saber world, Lin Fei's very own realm. It's truly magical, Lin Fei murmured. In the saber world, one can even plant some heavenly treasures and adjust its environment to the most conducive conditions. Those secret realms mentioned by immortal sects or martial sects could just be similar small worlds. A glint appeared in Lin Fei's eyes. Additionally, there was another advantage: storage space. Most martial artists, unlike the Qi condensation and foundation establishment cultivator of the immortal Tao, lacked storage treasures. After all, individuals like Lin Fei, who possessed the sky-reaching tower and the Dubhe Tao artifact, were rare exceptions. But if one could evolve their comprehension into a world, then it's a game-changer. For instance, Lin Fei could evolve his saber domain into saber world. By then, he could store anything, even entire mountains, without any issue. Even those who could move mountains and seas, Lin Fei could do the same. He could envelop an entire river with his small world and then release it, causing a massive flood. Once a martial artist evolves a world, they truly possess godlike abilities. Moreover, all the previous enhancement methods of the saber domain are available in the saber world, and they are even stronger. With a swish, Lin Fei opened his eyes. System, he muttered, and immediately, the system panel appeared in front of him. Host, Lin Fei. Martial Realm, Early Martial King. Supreme Saber Tao Bloodline, Perfection. Saber World, Perfection. Lin Fei's gaze immediately landed on the Supreme Saber Tao Bloodline. As expected, it had reached perfection. And the Saber World was also at its pinnacle. Having just evolved into the Saber World, it had already reached its zenith. The reason was simple: once the saber domain evolved into the saber world, it reached its limit. This path had come to an end. A martial artist's power ultimately returns to themselves. They must focus on their bloodlines to advance further. Lin Fei's first bloodline had already reached perfection, and he could start cultivating his second bloodline. However, it would take time, and Lin Fei wasn't willing to wait, especially with the unresolved matter of Tai Dao Palace. With a swoosh, Lin Fei appeared in the main hall of the ancient origin sect. Sect leader, he greeted as he spotted the head of the ancient origin sect. Your Highness, Martial King. The sect leader, as well as the Wind Sovereign, bowed respectfully. No one dared to be arrogant in front of Lin Fei, the Martial King and the unprecedented powerhouse of the ancient origin sect. Are you all prepared? Lin Fei asked. Has there been any movement from the Tai Dao Palace? Tai Dao Palace has been quiet recently, the sect leader replied. Of course, if they intend to hide, our spies would have a hard time uncovering any information. Lin Fei nodded. The methods of the immortal Taoists were vast and varied. It was far too easy for them to conceal themselves, especially for a sect with as profound a foundation as Tai Dao Palace. If they wanted to hide, the ancient origin sect wouldn't be able to detect anything. Regardless of whether Tai Dao Palace makes a move, Lin Fei declared, his eyes shining with determination, I will head to the Tai Dao Palace once more and obliterate them completely. He remembered the time in Great Chan when he eradicated the 10 great immortal sects, especially the Tongjian sect, which had a golden core heritage. Yet, what was the result? The 10 great immortal sects were annihilated. Now, even if Tai Dao Palace was of nascent soul heritage, Lin Fei believed the outcome would be the same. Let's go. Lin Fei didn't hesitate and with a wave of his hand, swept the ancient origin sect leader and others into the saber world. Then, turning into a streak of light, he sped towards the Tai Dao Palace. At the Tai Dao Palace, the palace master and several golden core true persons stood deferentially in front of a robed elder. Greetings, Taoist Lord Qinhe. All the golden core true persons hardly dared to breathe, showing the utmost respect to the robed elder. After all, this was Taoist Qinhe, a renowned nascent soul great bane. It was a significant cost for Tai Dao Palace to seek the help of Taoist Qinhe. Where is my idol? Taoist Qinhe asked straightforwardly. The Tai Dao Palace master respectfully presented a jade bottle. With a casual wave, Taoist Qinhe used an invisible force to bring the bottle to his hand. As he opened the bottle and saw the divine water within, a smile spread across his face. I didn't expect that Tai Dao Palace would possess such a treasure. Grandian Moonlight Divine Water. One of the 3 lights divine waters. If all 3 are gathered, it can heal any wound, even if a golden core transformation fails. The hearts of the Tai Dao Palace disciples ached. The Grandian Moonlight Divine Water was indeed a priceless treasure, but the sect leader bitterly said, although the 3 lights divine water is extraordinary, without the other 2 types, this Grandian Moonlight Divine Water is useless to us. Instead, perhaps you might gather the other 2 in the future. Taoist Qinhe nodded, very well. Now, what do you want in return? Please, strike down Lin Fei of the ancient origin sect. The Tai Dao Palace master gritted his teeth and voiced the request of the whole palace. In his heart, he recognized the threat that Lin Fei posed, and, wanting to eliminate it, he was willing to offer their most treasured item to ensure Lin Fei's end. I agree. Taoist Qinhe responded, the ancient origin sect. I will annihilate them as well. How can a mere martial arts sect threaten a nascent soul lineage? To Taoist Qinhe, wiping out the ancient origin sect was as easy as flipping his hand. Suddenly, Taoist Qinhe sensed something. He sharply looked towards the entrance of the Tai Dao Palace. Who else have you angered, Tai Dao Palace? It seems you have a significant problem on your hands. With a look that was both amused and mocking, he said to the Tai Dao Palace master. Chapter 370. The Taoist Lord's Shock. What kind of people can Tai Dao Palace mess with? Tai Dao Palace master exclaimed in puzzlement. Recently, he issued a strict decree. All members of the Tai Dao Palace were forbidden from causing any disturbances. Though the palace wasn't officially sealed off, in practice it bore no difference from such a state. Surely they had not attracted any adversaries. Furthermore, even if they had, who would dare approach the gates of Tai Dao Palace seeking trouble? As the master continued to muse on the situation, his gaze landed on a streak of light shooting across the distant sky. The luminous trail halted in midair, revealing a figure. Upon recognizing the silhouette, the master's face paled. Taoist Lord Qinhe, he addressed, that man is Lin Fei from the ancient origin sect. He has dared to approach the gates of our Tai Dao Palace once more. It appears he intends to shatter our gates just as he did the last time. I implore you, Taoist Lord, strike down Lin Fei. At the very sight of Lin Fei, the palace master's heart skipped a beat. But with the timely presence of Taoist Qinhe, a glimmer of hope sparked within him. Are you certain that this individual is Lin Fei from the ancient origin sect? Taoist Qinhe's face grew stern, his eyes locked intently onto the figure hovering in the void. Without a shadow of a doubt, it is indeed Lin Fei, the master affirmed. Taoist Qinhe's eyes gleamed with a subtle brilliance. He distinctly recalled the palace master mentioning a few months prior that Lin Fei merely possessed 5 divine abilities. Even if they were top-tier great divine abilities, he was still but a martial sovereign. However, upon this encounter, Daoist Qin had detected a certain transformation in Lin Fei, though its exact nature eluded him. After all, he wasn't a martial artist. He had never encountered a martial kin, although he had met numerous martial sovereigns. Yet, Lin Fei seemed distinct from the typical martial sovereign. However, he did not ponder on it too deeply. The very fact that Tai Dao Palace had willingly offered him the elixir spoke volumes of Lin Fei's extraordinary nature. Very well, if Lin Fei has chosen to come forth, then I shall graciously end his journey here. Without hesitation, Daoist Qin has stepped forth, his form darting towards the gates of Tai Dao Palace. At that moment, outside the gates of Tai Dao Palace, Lin Fei paused. "We have arrived at Tai Dao Palace," Lin Fei murmured softly. With a wave of his hand, the leaders of the ancient origin sect, the Wind Sovereign, and others emerged from his saber world. Gazing upon the Tai Dao Palace brought a melange of emotions for each individual. The previous venture with Lin Fei had been tinged with trepidation and underlying fear. They were uncertain of the events that might unfold. Perhaps Lin Fei's earlier failure might have resulted in the ancient origin sect's destruction at the hands of Tai Dao Palace. Things were different now. Lin Fei had become the martial king. They held no doubt that Lin Fei had the power to annihilate Tai Dao Palace. Witnessing the downfall of Tai Dao Palace was a great honor for them, a rare opportunity. Their spirits lifted in anticipation. Lin Fei gazed at the looming Tai Dao Palace, but he refrained from making his move. Because he noticed a figure of a Taoist transformed into a stream of light shooting straight out from the gates of Tai Dao Palace. Did Tai Dao Palace really believe that a mere golden core true person could match Lin Fei? Floating in the void, Daoist Qin looked down at Lin Fei. "Are you Lin Fei of the ancient origin sect?" he asked calmly. Yet, beneath that calm demeanor was an air of superiority, as if he looked down upon all mortals. "You aren't from Tai Dao Palace, are you?" Lin Fei frowned. He could tell. If this man was from the palace, he would recognize him. Moreover, he dared to step out of the gates. "I am Qin, invited by the Tai Dao Palace," the Taoist explained. "Invited by Tai Dao Palace?" Lin Fei shook his head. "Then I advise you to leave at once. I intend to destroy Tai Dao Palace utterly. If you are not a disciple of the palace, I can let you go. But this is your only chance. Stay, and you'll be judged just like them." Daoist Qin looked surprised. "Have you not heard of me?" He thought that once he revealed his identity, Lin Fei would understand. However, Lin Fei's ignorance and his audacity to threaten him left him taken aback. When was the last time someone dared to challenge the Taoist Lord this way? A brash ancient origin sect. And a presumptuous Lin Fei. A mere martial sovereign daring to belittle me and threatening to destroy Tai Dao Palace. Having cultivated a few top-tier great divine abilities, has arrogance consumed you? Today, I shall be your end." Daoist Qin had declared. With a single word, thunder, a massive bolt of lightning materialized out of the void, so grand that it seemed to connect the heavens and earth. Just this singular bolt was enough to obliterate any martial sovereign. It was a spell, but also not quite. There were no incantations, no hand signs. Just one word from the Daoist Qin. This was the power of a nascent soul, the power where words become reality. Only the nascent souls have this capability. Simply uttering a word can summon the elements. Say wind, and wind will blow. Say rain, and rain will fall. Say thunder, and thunder will strike. Such was the power of the nascent soul, having the ability to harness the natural forces of the universe. It stems from their deep connection and understanding of the cosmos. The moment the power of the nascent soul is invoked, it can control the forces between heaven and earth. Witnessing the lightning bolt, which pierced through the sky with its overwhelming aura, every cultivator within Tai Dao Palace felt a glint in their eyes. This was the formidable might of a nascent soul. Every gesture, every word, manifested power instantly. This was the Tao of the immortals. Only those at the nascent soul level can truly be termed as great beings. No matter how powerful a golden core true person might be, they couldn't be termed as a great being. To the leader of Tai Dao Palace, Daoist Qin, a nascent soul of great capability, could obliterate Lin Fei with just a word. With a simple breath, even the entirety of the ancient origin sect could be destroyed. This was the nascent soul great being that all cultivators dreamed of achieving. The sky-piercing bolt of lightning came crashing down at an unimaginable speed. Lin Fei didn't even have time to evade, but he didn't even try. He simply looked up at the lightning bolt falling from the void. With a casual move, he clenched his hand into a fist. With a loud boom, in the next moment, Lin Fei's hand grew immensely, casting a massive shadow across the sky. This colossal hand reached out towards the lightning and with a mere grasp, caught it. The lightning was completely obliterated within Lin Fei's grip. Everyone present was left stunned, staring at Lin Fei in disbelief. This was the power of the Taoist Lord Shenhe's lightning, something that even a peak martial sovereign wouldn't be able to withstand. Yet, Lin Fei had effortlessly nullified it. Was this still the strength of a martial sovereign? Every gesture imbued with the power of divine abilities. Such physical strength is beyond comprehension. Martial King. Could it be that you've become a martial king? The pupils of the Taoist Shenhe slightly contracted, a hint of shock evident on his face. Chapter 371. Martial King's True Form, Battle Against Nascent Soul's Magic Avatar. Martial King. This was a title that was on the same level as the Nascent Soul. They were both termed as great beings. Every great being possessed unimaginable strength, allowing them to communicate with the heavens and the earth. For example, the Nascent Soul Cultivator's ability to manifest power with just their words. And the Martial King. Every gesture of theirs is infused with a great divine ability. They could cause the sky to crumble with just one blow and the earth to split. But how could Lin Fei be a martial king? This scene left everyone from the Tai Dao Palace dumbfounded. The leader of Tai Dao Palace was even trembling. Martial king? How did Lin Fei become a martial king? Without being a martial king, there's no way he could so easily block the attack from the Taoist Lord Shenhe. It's only been a few months. The leader of Tai Dao Palace felt he had already placed enough importance on Lin Fei. This time, he even used Tai Dao Palace's precious treasure, the Grandian Moonlight Divine Water, to get a single opportunity for the Taoist Lord Shenhe to make a move. But who would have thought that Lin Fei had become a martial king? At this moment, in the void, Lin Fei and Shenhe were in a standoff. Manifesting power with your words, so you were a nascent soul cultivator. Lin Fei's eyes slightly narrowed. He had recognized the strength of the Taoist Shenhe in front of him. Indeed, he was a nascent soul cultivator. Lin Fei had encountered king-level exotic beasts before, but this was his first time seeing a nascent soul of such caliber. Taoist Lord Shenhe felt a sinking feeling in his heart, and his expression was grim. Wasn't he supposed to deal with a mere martial sovereign? How did it turn into facing a martial king? He had also previously investigated Lin Fei and had been under the impression that Lin Fei was just a martial sovereign. Furthermore, the ancient origin sect had never birthed a martial king before. Hence, he had agreed to this so readily. But now, Lin Fei had turned into a martial king. This left Taoist Lord Shenhe in a tough spot. After all, he had his reputation to uphold. If he left shamefully just because Lin Fei turned out to be a martial king, he would probably become a laughingstock among the nascent soul cultivators. However, risking his life to fight against a martial king just for the Grandian Moonlight Divine Water seemed unreasonable. Then, a thought flashed through the mind of Taoist Lord Shenhe, and he quickly devised a plan. I've accepted the items from Tai Dao Palace, so I must act. Since you're a martial king, your divine abilities must be exceptional. I have also cultivated a magic avatar. I shall use my magic avatar to test your divine abilities. A terrifying aura erupted from Taoist Lord Shenhe. Boon. Suddenly, a colossal magic avatar, tens of thousands of meters tall, emerged in the void. Countless spiritual chi from heaven and earth frantically converged into the magic avatar. The void trembled in a fierce wind blow. An oppressive pressure descended upon Lin Fei. This was the nascent soul cultivator's magic avatar. Cultivators of the immortal Tao have always been inferior in close combat compared to martial artists. However, once reaching the nascent soul stage, it's different. Nascent soul cultivators can use specific spiritual materials, combined with spells, refining techniques, etc., to cultivate a magic avatar. Also known as external incarnation. In essence, they all mean the same thing. A magic avatar has the power to shake the heavens and the earth and can face off against martial kings. Some powerful magic avatars are even more terrifying than the real bodies of martial kings. Magic avatar. The voice of Taoist Lord Shinhe emanated from the magic avatar. The magic avatar was the Taoist Lord Shinhe, and the Taoist Lord Shinhe was the magic avatar. They were one and the same. In front of such a terrifying magic avatar, all protective formations, all nascent soul magic treasures were useless. One blow could destroy the entire Tai Dao Palace. Only then could one be called a nascent soul great being. Magic avatar. A peculiar gleam flashed in Lin Fei's eyes. The next moment, his supreme Saber Dao bloodline erupted from within him. Boom! Lin Fei's body rapidly expanded, transforming into tens of thousands of meters in an instant. Lin Fei's supreme Saber Dao bloodline was being activated for the first time. Even though Lin Fei had perfected it, he had never activated the supreme Saber Dao bloodline before. Now, as he activated it, his enormous body became incredibly sturdy. Behind him, there was a faint shadow of a saber, and on his body, there were patterns that looked like saber marks. This was the martial king's true form. Lin Fei stood in the void, his true martial king form emanating a sharp edge, like a divine saber. Even Taoist Lord Shinhe felt a palpitation in his heart. What kind of bloodline is this? Such a sharp saber edge. In reality, Saber Dao bloodlines were rare. After all, not everyone was a saber master. Only the top saber masters would think of cultivating a Saber Dao bloodline. And even if one wished to cultivate it, without enough proficiency in the Saber Dao, one couldn't cultivate it. Especially considering that Lin Fei's Saber Dao bloodline was the supreme Saber Dao bloodline and it was already perfected. Lin Fei looked at his true martial king form. Compared to when he had just become a martial king within the Dubhe Dao artifact, his true martial king form was now noticeably different. Back then, Lin Fei's martial king bloodline was very mixed, containing various bloodlines, including the Flood Dragon King's bloodline. But now, it was different. Lin Fei's bloodline was very pure, purely of the Saber Dao bloodline. Saber of the Heavens, strike. In the following instant, Lin Fei wielded a saber that materialized from thin air. This saber, too, originated from Lin Fei's lineage. It was a blade forged from countless divine abilities within Lin Fei's Saber Dao lineage. The very essence of his supreme Saber Dao bloodline was to attack. Its power was immense. Thus, when Lin Fei swung his blade, the skies did not shatter, yet the very fabric of space showed cracks. These weren't mere spatial rifts. They were genuine fissures in the void. With this one strike, Lin Fei could slice through the fabric of reality itself. Avatar, slay. Taoist Lord Shinhe summoned his avatar with equal vigor. Thereupon, the magic avatar surged towards Lin Fei. In an instant, two titanic beings, miles tall, engaged in a frenzied duel within the void. Even the faintest residual waves were enough to strike terror into any heart. Below, the protective formation of Tai Dao Palace wavered as if on the brink of total collapse. Such is the might of a nascent soul cultivator clashing with a martial king. A true battle of titans, surpassing the confines of any ordinary conflict. All spells, divine abilities, and the like were rendered ineffective. Even if the nascent soul-level treasures were to strike the true form or magic avatar, they would be but mere tickles. However, the confrontation was brief. One swing, 2, 3. With just 3 strikes, the magic avatar of Taoist Lord Shinhe could no longer withstand. His avatar showed a gash from Lin Fei's blade. The complexion of Taoist Lord Shinhe shifted drastically. His avatar, which he had crafted over vast stretches of time using countless precious resources, could only barely last against 3 of Lin Fei's strikes. Retract. Without hesitation, Taoist Lord Shinhe withdrew his avatar and loudly proclaimed, "Your divine abilities are boundless, dear friend. In this battle, I admit defeat. I've given Tai Dao Palace its due. Farewell until we meet again." To everyone's surprise, Taoist Shinhe began to execute his escape technique. His intention was clear, not to engage in a life-and-death struggle with Lin Fei. After a few exchanges with Lin Fei, his honor would be intact. Thus, Taoist Shinhe began his departure. Tai Dao Palace dared not voice any objections. Considering the present circumstances, it seemed that the days of Tai Dao Palace were numbered. Taoist Lord Shinhe, the master of Tai Dao Palace, paled. With the departure of Taoist Shenhe, the end of Tai Dao Palace was certain. But who could stop the Taoist Lord's escape? Even a martial king would struggle against a nascent soul cultivator. However, Lin Fei was no ordinary martial king. Thinking of leaving? Shenhe, you think you can come and go as you please, attack or retreat on a whim? Saber world, arise. With a deep roar from Lin Fei, the very sky seemed to morph. It wasn't just the sky but the entire world transformed. Saber world. A realm of its own. Now, as the Saber world descended, it instantly ensnared the flame Taoist Shenhe. Chapter 372. Unveiling of Saber world, slaying the nascent soul magic avatar. Saber. Saber world. The countenance of the Taoist Shenhe changed drastically in an instant. Why does a martial kin possess the ability to manifest the Saber world? His spirit quivered profoundly. To his understanding, evolving a domain into a world was an extraordinarily arduous feat. Such a metamorphosis from domain to world was even more significant than the transformation from a martial sovereign to a martial king. A martial king who could manifest the Saber world had almost become the stuff of legends. But here and now, he had encountered such a martial king. He couldn't decide if this was fortune smiling upon him or a cruel twist of fate. Enveloped by the Saber world, everything inside and out was isolated. Regardless of how the Taoist Lord Shenhe attempted to use his escape techniques, they proved futile. There was no escaping the Saber world. The only conceivable method of escape was to tear the Saber world asunder. Heavenly Saber, strike. Within the confines of the Saber world, the true martial king form of Lin Fei approached once more. Empowered by the Saber world, Lin Fei's supreme Saber Dao bloodline seemed to amplify manifold in an instant. With the enhancement of the Saber world, his Saber lineage grew even mightier. Thus, when Lin Fei's Saber descended, its power surged not just twofold or threefold, but by an astonishing 10 times. Naturally, only one with the supreme Saber Dao bloodline could achieve such amplification within the Saber world. Avatar. The visage of the Taoist Lord Shenhe contorted in alarm upon seeing Lin Fei's incoming saber. In a swift move, he manifested his magic avatar. However, with Lin Fei having invoked the Saber world and cut off any connections, there was an absence of spiritual qi. The magic avatar summoned by the Taoist Lord Shenhe saw its strength drastically reduced in the absence of the ability to draw upon the spiritual qi of the universe. Its prowess waned by at least 2/3. In this ebb and flow of power, Lin Fei's strength was now overwhelmingly dominant over the Taoist Lord Shenhe. With a swifter swish, Lin Fei's saber came crashing down, cleaving the Shenhe's magic avatar in twain. The terrifying force contained within the saber detonated within the magic avatar, reducing it to dust at a speed visible to the naked eye. The magic avatar was shattered, utterly annihilated, turning to ashes. How was this possible? The Taoist Lord Shenhe's face turned ashen. That was his magic avatar. For the mighty nascent souls, their primary defensive mechanism was their magic avatar. With it, they could confront any peril by sending forth their magic avatar. Even if the magic avatar was destroyed, they would not suffer any personal harm. The only consequence was the loss of the magic avatar, necessitating its recultivation, consuming considerable energy and resources. This wasn't the time for the Taoist Lord Shenhe to lament the loss of his magic avatar. While he could come to terms with losing his magic avatar, he now found himself in grave danger. Trapped inside the saber world, escape was challenging, especially without his magic avatar. The direct consequence: he might face death. The thought made the heart of the Taoist Lord Shenhe tremble. He never imagined that a trip to Tai Dao Palace would bring him to the brink of life and death. As a venerable nascent soul great being, blessed with millennia of lifespan, how could he just perish? Heavenly dragon beads, detonate for me. Now in utter desperation, the Taoist Lord Shenhe released several white orbs from within him. These beads, pulsating with tremendous power, appeared to be some sort of magic treasure. However, without any hesitation, he chose to detonate these magic treasures. A booming explosion echoed as Lin Fei immediately tried to suppress it with the saber world. Still, the explosion from the heavenly dragon beads was so potent that it tore through the saber world. This was the Taoist Lord Shenhe's last resort. Each of these heavenly dragon beads was a magic treasure of the nascent soul tier. Once detonated, even a nascent soul magic avatar could be reduced to dust. Doused Lord Shinra had hoped never to use this trump card, but the current peril left him no choice. If he didn't use it, he might very well die. Escape. As the saber world was ripped apart, the doused Lord Shinra instantly deployed his escape technique. In the blink of an eye, he vanished from Lin Fei's saber world. He had escaped. The flame-doused lord wasn't pursued by Lin Fei. Even if he gave chase, Lin Fei knew he couldn't catch up. The swiftness of the escape technique was breathtaking. Pity I couldn't slay him, Lin Fei sighed. Nascent soul cultivators were not so easily defeated. Still, Lin Fei had now gauged the full measure of the doused lord's abilities. Without the heavenly dragon beads, the doused Shinra would surely have perished. Or, if Lin Fei had another lineage ability, Shinra would be doomed. As it stood, while Lin Fei could overpower the doused lord with his saber world and supreme saber Dao bloodline, he couldn't kill him. After all, who knew how many more heavenly dragon beads Shinra possessed? The most significant distinction between a nascent soul cultivator and a martial king was the vast array of techniques at the former's disposal. Even without a magic avatar, they had magic treasures. Devoid of those, they could even set up magical formations. Their arsenal was unpredictable and seemingly endless. While the doused Lord Shinra might have escaped, the Tai Dao Palace couldn't. Lin Fei's gaze now settled on the palace below. At this moment, everyone in Tai Dao Palace was looking up at the colossal figure of Lin Fei's true martial kin form, standing tens of thousands of meters tall in the void. The mere aura emanating from him made them feel as if they were suffocating. Most notably, with the escape of the doused Lord Shinra, the morale of Tai Dao Palace had suffered an unimaginable blow. Escaped. How could the doused Lord Shinra escape? If the doused Lord Shinra has fled, what will become of our Tai Dao Palace? That's a genuine martial king. The doused Lord Shinra took the divine water from our Tai Dao Palace. How could he just run? In a moment, panic surged among everyone in Tai Dao Palace. A martial king? Such a figure represents true power. Particularly after witnessing Lin Fei effortlessly slash the magic avatar of the doused Lord Shinra. This scene confirmed to all that Lin Fei's strength surpassed that of the doused Lord Shinra, compelling the latter to flee in haste. Even if the Tai Dao Palace had protective formations set up by the nascent soul ancestors, could they really stop such a mighty force? Palace Master, what should we do now? Palace Master, please think of something. If not, our Tai Dao Palace will be finished. Palace Master, our Tai Dao Palace has a lineage spanning tens of thousands of years. It cannot end under our watch. Several Golden Core true persons were in utter panic, especially those who had recently awakened. Their expressions turned ashen upon witnessing this scene. They fully grasped the implications of facing a martial king, especially one capable of annihilating a nascent soul cultivator's magic avatar. Such might was beyond their comprehension. If the protective formation fails, Tai Dao Palace would be doomed. However, the Palace Master didn't heed the pleas of the Golden Core Elders. He abruptly raised his head, gazing at Lin Fei, and shouted, "Lin Fei, you've risen to the rank of martial king, a true powerhouse. My Tai Dao Palace is willing to bow down to you, even merge into the ancient origin sect, and let you decide our fate. We only beg you to spare Tai Dao Palace, not to annihilate it, and allow our lineage to continue." At this point, the Palace Master of Tai Dao Palace felt utterly powerless, hoping against hope that Lin Fei would show mercy, and he was willing to pay any price for that. Yet, Lin Fei remained unmoved. Had Tai Dao Palace been a martial arts sect, perhaps he would have had second thoughts. However, for an immortal Dao sect, Lin Fei lacked the means to control such a vast number of followers. Given this, extermination seemed the better option to ensure no future troubles arose. Heavenly Saber, strike. The massive figure of Lin Fei's true martial king form swung down his saber. It's over. Witnessing this, the true of Tai Dao Palace, filled with anguish, closed his eyes. Tai Dao Palace was no more. Chapter 373. Annihilating Tai Dao Palace. Boom. With a slash, Lin Fei's blade came down, the power of the supreme Saber Dao bloodline unparalleled. Even without the blessings of Saber World, this one slash could effortlessly breach Tai Dao Palace's mountain-protecting formation. Mountains within the Tai Dao Palace, along with countless palaces and towers, were cleaved in half by Lin Fei's sky-descending slash. The ground split apart, mountains crumbled, and in an instant, the entirety of Tai Dao Palace was reduced to ruins. No escape was possible. Lin Fei's saber world had enveloped the entire Tai Dao Palace. Great Mountain Divine Seal. Grinning his teeth, the palace master, in unison with all the Golden Core true persons, activated the Great Mountain Divine Seal. The colossal seal was directed at Lin Fei. They knew they were cornered. Lin Fei just shook his head. The might of the martial king lay in their every gesture, each imbued with divine power. Confronted with the roaring Great Mountain Divine Seal, a nascent soul magic treasure, Lin Fei simply extended his palm, which expanded wildly to block out the sun, instantly seizing the Great Mountain Divine Seal. The seal struggled and vibrated, but to no avail. Lin Fei tightened his grip, and with a soft pop, the Great Mountain Divine Seal was crushed and shattered to pieces in Lin Fei's hand. A genuine nascent soul magic treasure was rendered as fragile as paper in his grip. Lin Fei casually tossed the fragments, which were like huge rocks, further devastating Tai Dao Palace. Facing the members of Tai Dao Palace, Lin Fei couldn't be bothered to spare them any more attention. Saber World. Lin Fei summoned the power of Saber World. The world-rumbling Saber World, with its unimaginable power, crushed every Golden Core true person in Tai Dao Palace to dust at Lin Fei's mere thought. The entire topography of Tai Dao Palace transformed, lofty mountains turned into valleys, and raging torrents flooded into the gates of the palace. In a blink, the once majestic Tai Dao Palace resembled a vast pond, leaving no trace of its former grandeur. Witnessing this dramatic transformation, members of the ancient origin sect and others were left dumbfounded, their hearts throbbing with astonishment. The Tai Dao Palace, which was just a moment ago magnificent and mysterious, had been turned into a vast pond. Lin Fei's methods were simply inconceivable. Obliterating a nascent soul lineage seemed as effortless as flipping his hand. At this moment, they seemed to come to their senses. Lin Fei was no longer a martial sovereign, but a martial king, a true powerhouse. The means at the disposal of such a figure were profound and boundless, far beyond their imaginations. "All right, let's go," Lin Fei said indifferently. "From now on, this region belongs to the ancient origin sect." "Martial King, how should we deal with Red Hades Mansion?" the sect leader of Ancient Origin Sect inquired. Of the three major forces, Profound Light Cave Heaven had already been annihilated. Only Red Hades Mansion and Ancient Origin Sect remained. Now, with Lin Fei's annihilation of their biggest foe, Tai Dao Palace, only Red Hades Mansion was left. "Red Hades Mansion, give them a chance to relocate," Lin Fei remarked casually. It was evident that Red Hades Mansion couldn't remain here. After all, the Ancient Origin Sect had now emerged as the genuine martial king lineage, poised to consolidate territories of the three major forces and that of Tai Dao Palace. It was inconceivable to leave Red Hades Mansion in place. Allowing them to leave with dignity was already doing them a favor. Otherwise, with just a flick of Lin Fei's wrist, he could wipe out Red Hades Mansion. However, these matters weren't his concern. It was up to the sect leader of the Ancient Origin Sect and others to handle. Lin Fei promptly left Tai Dao Palace, heading back to the Ancient Origin Sect. Yet, everyone knew, having obliterated Tai Dao Palace, Lin Fei's name would surely echo in all directions, shaking the entire ancient continent. Inside the main hall of Red Hades Mansion, the Golden Core true persons of the mansion sat with solemn expressions. "All of you have received the news, right? Tai Dao Palace is gone, annihilated by Lin Fei, the martial king of the Ancient Origin Sect. Moreover, Lin Fei repelled the Taoist Lord Shenhe invited by Tai Dao Palace, destroying his nascent soul magic avatar. Ancient Origin Sect has now become the real martial king lineage. They have given us 1 month to vacate our sect grounds." After the leader of Red Hades Mansion finished, there was no uproar in the hall, no arguments, and no indignant outbursts. It was very quiet. In reality, they were not surprised by this news. They had anticipated it. No martial king lineage, or nascent soul lineage for that matter, would allow another sect to exist within their domain. It was simply unthinkable. Of course, Red Hades Mansion was not reconciled. They had a heritage spanning tens of thousands of years. Though they had never produced a nascent soul, they were still a long-standing immortal sect. However, in the face of the Ancient Origin Sect's might and the dominance of a true powerhouse, Red Hades Mansion was left with no options. "Let's move. What can we do now?" Even the Tai Dao Palace is gone, let alone us, someone from the Red Hades mansion said. At least the ancient origin sect is still honorable. They gave us time to relocate instead of directly exterminating Red Hades mansion, another one added. Although relocating the sect is humiliating, as long as Red Hades mansion retains its strength, we can settle down anywhere and establish ourselves again. We need a great being too. As long as we preserve our strength, someday Red Hades mansion will also give birth to a nascent soul great bane. Such incidents won't happen again. In a short time, everyone in the Red Hades mansion reached a consensus. Move. They must relocate. And quickly at that. In case the ancient origin sect changes its mind. If they decide to wipe them out later, there would be nothing they could do. I truly envy the ancient origin sect to have birthed a martial king. The leader of Red Hades mansion murmured to himself, when can Red Hades mansion produce a nascent soul great bane? In the martial kin family of the Xiao Yuchen was cultivating a divine ability. She hoped to perfect it as soon as possible. Suddenly, a scout under Xiao Yuchen rushed in. Report. Martial Sovereign Lin Fei of the ancient origin sect has achieved the martial kin prize. Lin Fei went to Tai Dao Palace and battled with nascent soul cultivator Chen He, invited by Tai Dao Palace. Martial King Lin Fei destroyed the nascent soul magic avatar of Taoist Lord Chen He. Tai Dao Palace has been trampled by Martial King Lin Fei and their lineage has been severed. Whoosh! Xiao Yuchen lifted her head, staring at the scout, seemingly unable to believe her ears. What did she hear? Lin Fei became a martial king. He even repelled Taoist Lord Chen He. Destroyed the Tai Dao Palace. It all seemed like a fairy tale. How could she believe it? Aurora's sovereign, it's absolutely true. Ancient origin sect is already preparing for the martial king celebration. Many martial king families and nascent soul lineages have been invited to attend. The Xiao family should have also received an invitation. Xiao Yuchen didn't respond. She was profoundly shocked. In the past, she considered that Lin Fei might have the potential of a martial king. In some ways, she even had certain intentions towards Lin Fei. But before she could act upon her intentions, Lin Fei had already become a martial king. Now, their statuses are worlds apart. Those intentions could only be forever sealed in her mind.